I am very frustrated with the Tennessee Titans right now. The Tennessee Titans have made a lot of dumb decisions, in my opinion, over the last few years. Before I get into what they did in free agency and before they cut Harold Landry, I have to talk about the ownership. The ownership with the Tennessee Titans has been bad for multiple decades now. Not just the last 5 years. It's been this way for a very long time, dating back to when they had Steve McNair at the quarterback position. I look at the ownership now with the Titans. She came out a couple of years ago. She fired Mike Vrabel. But before we got to that point, they traded A.J. Brown. Now, you had a general manager at that time, had no idea what the hell he was doing. You traded one of your best offensive players, because I will not say that A.J. Brown was the best offensive player, because at that time you still had Derrick Henry, who was ruling the NFL. He was one of the best running backs in the NFL at that time. He is still one of the best running backs in all of football. But you trade A.J. Brown, a consistent deep threat who was a do-it-all wide receiver. Just phenomenal. You trade him to the Philadelphia Eagles for a first-round pick. They did not want to give him a contract extension, which is crazy because A.J. Brown was all-world. But you traded him away to the Eagles. And the Eagles have won a Super Bowl, and they've been to 2 Super Bowls since then. He's been a great wide receiver. You can say that he has his diva moments. He's still a great wide receiver. You traded him. Then you go into the first round and you select Treylon Burks from Arkansas. The general manager came out and he said that he likes the way that Treylon Burks really could go out there and could be another A.J. Brown. That's why they selected him in the first round. Now, Treylon Burks, Arkansas, was a very good wide receiver. Comes over to training camp. He's gassed it. He's winded out. You know what? He's a rookie. Give him time. Treylon Burks has been a terrible player for the Tennessee Titans. He can't catch the football on a consistent basis. He can't get open, and he's not a technically sound route runner. And for his body and his size, you would think that he would be a very good 50-50 wide receiver in terms of going out there and catching the fade ball or just running past people. He's 6'2", 225 pounds. Treylon Burks can't catch the football. He can't run routes. He can't be physical enough at this level. He doesn't have elite speed. So what is he good at? And he can't stay healthy either with this organization. That was a terrible pick for the Tennessee Titans. And this was the man that was supposed to come in and be your next number 1 wide receiver. It hasn't worked out. They had to make a move to bring in DeAndre Hopkins. And at that time, that was a very good move. He was a free agent. He just got cut by the Arizona Cardinals. He became the number 1 wide receiver. And there was still a lot of faith with the Tennessee Titans in that organization that Treylon Burks could be the guy. But he hasn't been the guy ever. And then you had to bring in Calvin Ridley in free agency. But we're talking about a different general manager now because she fired him. And Mike Vrabel, he got fired also. The reason why this is so confusing to me, you fired Mike Vrabel because you wanted your head coach and general manager to be on the same page. You're in your 3rd general manager in the last few years. You fired Rand after 2 seasons. And Rand, he did not trade A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown was gone when he came here. You only gave that man 2 years to figure things out. That was it. It takes more than 2 years to turn a franchise around. They should have kept Mike Vrabel at the head coaching spot. Because when you look at the team, he got the most out of the Tennessee Titans than anyone else could have. They went to the NFL playoffs multiple times. The best chance they had to actually contend for a championship is when they lost to the Cincinnati Bengals. And that's when the Bengals went to the Super Bowl. That was the best the Tennessee Titans were. They should have went out there and altered pieces then. It was hard to bring in another quarterback, but Ryan Tannehill was solid enough with it being a run-heavy offense with Derrick Henry and having A.J. Brown on the outside. And they also were so desperate, you traded for Julio Jones, who was way behind his prime, and he couldn't stay healthy. And I know that Mike Vrabel had some terrible offensive coordinators. Don't get me wrong. The man had tied down in calling plays. I understand that. But Mike Vrabel still was able to go out there and win those football games when they mattered the most. Even when they traded A.J. Brown, they were 8-3 to begin the next season. And injuries were the reason why they took a major step back. And you saw Mike Vrabel have his blueprint with the team. It worked. It was consistent, but you let him go. And I don't even hate Coach Callahan. I think that he will be a successful head coach, but he needs the front office to be better. And you're bringing in yet another general manager. I don't think that Rand did a horrible job. I think that Rand did a lot of solid things. He brought in some veteran players like L'Jarius Sneed, brought in Calvin Ridley, went out there, brought in Cushenberry, drafted J.C. Latham. He was filling needs that this team had. He's filling in those voids, and he did that. It takes more than 2 years. That's all I'm saying. But she lets him go, and you bring in this general manager in Mike. I am not a huge fan of what he's doing right now because Harold Landry, we go back a few years ago, he missed an entire season towards ACL in training camp. He comes back. He's a solid pass rusher. Just had 9 sacks this previous season. You would think that we will hold on to Harold Landry. We'll see what he has from this brand new general manager standpoint because you need all the help you can get because you had the first overall pick. You may go Abdul Carter. You may go Cam Ward. And I'll talk about that discussion in the next few minutes. But you cut Harold Landry. You couldn't even trade this man. You couldn't even trade him for a 5th or a 6th round pick. You cut him and he goes to the New England Patriots, making him one of the best free agents at his position. And you cut him for nothing. Now, I don't know if it was reports about him wanting out in the trade. I didn't see any. He was with the team since he got drafted, and Mike Vrabel is his former head coach. But Harold Landry was a main staple with the Tennessee Titans defense. Was he a great pass rusher? No. I'm talking about him being on the same level as a TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, or Micah Parsons. He's not in that conversation. But he can easily be one of the best pass rushers on your team, depending on the team. He's a very good player. But you cut him. And then you bring in Dan Moore Jr. to a contract worth $82 million, 4 years. Dan Moore Jr. allowed 12 sacks last season. You're bringing him in to play the left tackle position alongside J.C. Latham because he'll be the right tackle. You're trying to build this offensive line with younger talent. I understand that. I don't hate bringing in Dan Moore Jr. I hate the fact that they brought him in for $82 million. He's not worth that much. He was a consistent starter with the Steelers. He wasn't a good one. Now, if Coach Callahan Dad can figure him out as the offensive line coach, you could be working with something. But you're still overpaying him. He is not a good tackle, and we saw him against premier pass rushers, and he constantly let down Russell Wilson. He constantly let down Justin Fields. He constantly let down Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett. He's not a good starting tackle, and we've seen this on a consistent basis. But you have a lot of people in the national media, they'll come out and say, well, he's 26 years old. He's been a consistent starter. That doesn't mean you're a good offensive lineman. What makes you a good offensive lineman is the fact that you could go out there on a consistent basis and not let up those many pressures. The fact that you can go out there and be a technically sound offensive lineman. He has dealt with a lot of penalties and he's allowed a lot of sacks. Hopefully with Coach Callahan and his dad, he could figure out how to utilize this player. But I do not love this signing. And you can have contracts like this because you're not paying a franchise quarterback right now. But if Dan Moore Jr. is a bust on day one and he doesn't get any better at that tackle position, that's a horrible contract. That's going to be a hard contract to move off of because there'll be a lot of dead money. You do have some key weapons on this offensive line. I like them bringing in Kevin Zeitler at the right guard position, a very good veteran offensive lineman. J.C. Latham showed a lot of upside last season at the tackle position. And you drafted him in the first round for a reason. Peter Skoronski, he's entering year number 3. He's a very good left guard. And you have Cushenberry at the center position. He did tear his Achilles last season. Up to that point, he did not look particularly good. But with a full season with the Denver Broncos, he was one of the highest rated centers in the NFL. So there's a lot of turnover with this offensive line. And this offensive line has been a major issue the last 4 years. So hopefully they can figure things out at that front. But bringing in Dan Moore Jr., $82 million for 4 years, that's just ridiculous in my opinion. We'll see if it works out. If anyone can get the most out of him, it will be the offensive line coach, Coach Callahan. We'll see what happens. But not only just that, you now open yourself up to a weird situation. You now need a number 1 pass rusher with your first overall pick, and you still need a quarterback and Cam Ward. Now, you guys know how I feel about Cam Ward. I think that Cam Ward is the best quarterback in this draft class, and they should select him with the first overall pick. He can do everything for you, and he will fit the system to a T. He's a better player than Shedeur Sanders, in my opinion. If you say Shedeur Sanders is better than him, I would not have that much pushback. But for the style of play that I like to see, and for what Coach Callahan has done in the past in the NFL as an offensive play caller with the Cincinnati Bengals, even though he never called plays, he helped set up meetings and he helped orchestrate certain plays. You like to see big plays move down the field, and we saw that with Joe Burrow on a consistent basis. Cam Ward can give you that. Strong on quarterback, has very good mobility, just in case his offensive line is not good enough. And he has that accuracy from inside the pocket, and he wins with anticipation. We've seen that in the last 2 years with quarterbacks selected in the first round. With Jaden Daniels, wins off anticipation, tight accuracy, great mobility. Now, Cam Ward does not have the mobility as a Jaden Daniels, and we saw this with CJ in this division. Anticipation, poise, tight accuracy. That's what Cam Ward has. He will have a couple plays that make you scratch your head and say, okay, what's going on here? Why is he missing his throw? Offensive line problems that he's dealt with in the past. And he was a very good quarterback dealing with those offensive line problems. So when I look at Cam Ward, they should select him with the first overall pick. A quarterback is more important than a pass rusher. We've seen this over and over again. If you want to go back out there with Will Levis, I think that you're basically hurting Coach Callahan and you're hurting yourself if you are the general manager, because this owner, she has not given anyone any loyalty over the last few years. There's not a guarantee that this general manager will be back. You have to hit this first overall pick and you have to hit a home run, because Will Levis in the first 2 seasons of his career, 21 passing touchdowns and 16 interceptions, that's not going to get it done. Will Levis cost them football games this season. Mason Rudolph had to come in and start a couple of games this year. If Mason Rudolph did not start those games this season, if Will Levis was not dealing with that shoulder injury and the fact that he got benched, Will Levis would have easily had over 20 interceptions this season. He had 13 passing touchdowns to 12 interceptions. And he cost them the first 2 games of the regular season against the Chicago Bears and against the New York Jets with his pick sixes and his fumbles. You can't roll him back out there. And he's entering year 3 as a quarterback. We've seen quarterbacks in the past. They'll be a turnover machine. But at least you'll see some big-time production at the touchdown spot. In the stat category, we're not seeing that right now with Will Levis. He's costing them games. And I know that Peyton Manning is the first person you think of. He led the league in interceptions as a rookie. That's a different NFL. We're seeing young quarterbacks right now come in year 1. They're superstars, like Jaden Daniels, like CJ. And they put more talent around Will Levis in year 2 than he had in year 1. He was not supposed to be the starter in year 1. Ryan Tannehill went down with that ankle injury. We saw Malik Willis. He didn't look too hot. They put in Will Levis. And what is also very concerning about this organization, Malik Willis looked completely terrible with the Tennessee Titans. They traded him to the Green Bay Packers. Not only did he look better with the Packers, he defeated the Tennessee Titans when he was a starter because they catered to his strengths. So maybe Will Levis isn't as bad. Maybe it's the team around him. It's the organization. But when you have the first overall pick, you have to move on from the quarterback that has been able to hack it over the last 2 years. His rookie season, he showed some solid moments, especially against the Steelers, against the Atlanta Falcons, and against the Miami Dolphins. He's had some good moments in his career. Will Levis, he can play. I just don't know if he can be a consistent starter in this league. I know that a lot of people are saying this is a weak quarterback class. They're talking about the quarterbacks behind Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, and maybe Jackson Dart, depending on how you feel about him in that Ole Miss system. The rest of the quarterbacks, they're not on par with the years before. But the Tennessee Titans, you have to figure out that quarterback position, especially in this division. You have CJ to worry about. You have Trevor Lawrence to worry about. And you may laugh about Trevor Lawrence, but he has had some success in the NFL. He hasn't been placed in a great situation. But CJ and the Houston Texans, they've won this division in back-to-back years. And the Tennessee Titans, call me crazy. They can compete with the Houston Texans when they go against each other. They match up very well. And we saw this from last season when they defeated the Houston Texans. It happens. You play your division rivals closer. But I look at the Tennessee Titans, you're not that far off from being a constant threat in this division. I'm not talking about winning this division. You can go out there and win 6 or 7 games this upcoming year, but you have to play your cards right, because your defense was solid all the way through, especially passing defense wise and getting to the passer. And I'm talking about them needing Cam Ward here. You need a pass rusher now. You do have T'Vondre Sweat, who showed a lot of good moments in his rookie season playing alongside Jeffrey Simmons. But are you going to depend on Arden Key to be your guy? He only has 6.5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. You now need another pass rusher on the outside that can win one-on-one situations, and they don't have that right now, which is going to hurt your passing defense. Part of the reason why the passing defense looked as solid as it did, and it was a top passing defense, is the fact that they could create pressure up front. They did have problems stopping the run, but you have good run fitters on your team also. And when I look at the secondary, you bring in Xavier Woods, solid safety. L'Jarius Sneed, let's see if he can play better for this upcoming season than he did last year. But we saw him with the Kansas City Chiefs. He was a top defensive player in the NFL at that position. And you have a Money Hooker, who is a solid safety. And you have Roger McCreary also holding things down at the nickel position spot. So the Tennessee Titans, they have talent, but they've always had talent. They just can't get over the hump. No one is expecting the Tennessee Titans to go out there and win 12 to 14 games for this upcoming season. You just have to be better than you were last year. Just don't finish with a bottom 5 record to save Coach Callahan's job. Because I know there's a lot of rumors behind the scenes that they're very proud of what he was able to do in his first year, that there's a lot of encouraging signs. But she's brought out reports like this before about Mike Vrabel. And what did she do? She fired him. And going back to the Rand conversation, you bring in L'Jarius Sneed, you bring in Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears. That's not a terrible job, in my opinion. Not only do you need a quarterback and a pass rusher, you need another wide receiver. Because I forgot to mention this also, Nick Westbrook-Akine, who's a touchdown machine at the midway point in the season, he's no longer here. He's now with the Miami Dolphins, and you lost him for nothing also. They're paying him pennies on the dollar. And he was a very good, consistent number 2 wide receiver alongside Calvin Ridley. Your number 2 wide receiver right now is Van Jefferson. Van Jefferson is not a good wide receiver. Van Jefferson is the number 4 wide receiver at best. Calvin Ridley, over 1,000 yards, 4 receiving touchdowns, average 16 yards a catch. He's a true number 1. But if you're expecting for Treylon Burks and Van Jefferson to step up and be your 2 and 3 wide receiver, it's not going to happen. And you have Chigga Congo at the tight end spot. 479 receiving yards, 2 receiving touchdowns. He averaged 9 yards a catch. His numbers could be better with better quarterback play. If I'm the Tennessee Titans right here, I would have never cut Harold Landry to begin with. But I would still select Cam Ward with the first overall pick. And you see what you have, and you try to put some more wide receivers around him. But the Tennessee Titans right now, they have a lot of problems. And they have more problems coming out of free agency than they had entering free agency, which is crazy. And I blame all this on ownership. She is the one that's allowing the general manager to go out there and trade pieces like A.J. Brown. She's allowing the general manager to go out there and move on for certain pieces. Because I know that we can blame the general manager and we say that he made a horrible decision. You think that the owner doesn't sign off on that deal? When it's a big-time player like A.J. Brown, and you have him at the skill set that he has, an owner could come out and say, I'm revoking that trade. Don't believe me? Look at what the New York Jets did. It was a trade that was in place with Jerry Jeudy. Woody Johnson came out and said, hell no, we're not trading for Jerry Jeudy. She could have came out and she could have said, no, we're not trading A.J. Brown. As a matter of fact, I'm going to fire you for coming out with that idea. That's what I would have did. You don't trade players like that. The main core of your team is gone. Derrick Henry walked away in free agency, and I'm happy for him. He can contend with a Super Bowl with the Baltimore Ravens. We'll see if he can ever win one. But you cannot capitalize when the iron was hot. You cannot strike when the iron is hot. And now you find yourself in a dangerous situation. Hopefully things can work out with the Tennessee Titans, but I hate the move of bringing in Dan Moore Jr. for $82 million. I hate the move of cutting Harold Landry and getting nothing for him. I hate those moves already. And I want to see the Tennessee Titans be good. I still think that the future could be bright with Cam Ward. And I'm not going to jump up and down the general manager and say that he's terrible if he goes out there with the first overall pick and he selects Abdul Carter. But if you see Will Levis go out there and he has 13 passing touchdowns and he has 24 interceptions, you have no one else to blame but the general manager. So they can go pass rush in this situation and worry about the quarterback class and next year's draft class, and we'll see if it's better. And I also hate this notion. There's this notion next year's class is better than this year's class. It's a good chance that next year's class may be worse. We don't know what the quarterback's going to look like next year. It's always a quarterback that comes out of nowhere. They have one great season. They push them all the way up to the top. And you have a lot of people in the national media. They'll come out and they'll come out with these random quarterbacks. They'll say someone like Zach Wilson out of nowhere, someone like Jackson Dart out of nowhere. We haven't heard about these kids all year long. But when it's draft season, they propel them to the top. The same happened with Will Levis just a couple of years ago. All we heard about was Bryce Young. All we heard about was CJ. And you have Mel Kiper hitting the table. Will Levis should be a first-round pick. Will Levis should be a first-round pick, even though he was solid at Kentucky. We see why he wasn't a first-round pick, because the fact that his footwork is atrocious and he's a turnover machine. But let me know in the comment section below, what should Tennessee Titans do with the first overall pick? Should they go with Cam Ward or should they go with Abdul Carter? If you're new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. If you like the video, hit the like button. Most importantly, want each and every last one of you guys stay safe, stay positive. Thanks for watching the video, guys. God bless. Peace.